Hello, today we're here to teach you how to restore those old cutting boards and bring them back to their original beauty. The reason why I'm doing this video is because I do a lot of craft shows and farmers markets and I sell a lot of cutting boards, and people always come up and they start feeling the boards and they're like, oh, it's like glass. That's awesome, but I could never get one. And I'm like, why not? If it's beautiful, why not get one? And they're like, well, the knife marks will completely ruin the board. And I'm here to show you today that's not necessarily true. Yes, you will have to do maintenance on it, but when your car needs an oil change, is it completely ruined and you throw it away? No, you just do the required maintenance on it and you're good to go. Same thing with your cutting board. There is maintenance you need to do on it. We're gonna run through it today. We're gonna need nothing more than a few slices of sandpaper. You're gonna wanna get a couple different grits, and if you're not sure what a grit is or what numbers, your big box stores will have the number of what grit it is in the little yellow ring. You probably start out with an 80 grit just to take everything off and get it nice and smooth. Then move up to 120 or 150 if you have it, and then finish off with 220 and then 320. So today I confiscated 3 end grain cutting boards and a bar board I built for my family last year at this time. So it's got 12 months of knife marks, and I'm gonna show you those. They're not as bad as you might have seen. So these are the boards in question. This is walnut, maple, and Padauk end grain. You can see some knife marks right here. Then we got a solid walnut one. You can see some knife marks going vertically here. And then we got a chaos board with some nice knife marks going both vertical and horizontal here. And then we got a bar board. So this was really used for chopping some lemons and limes up. And you can see a lot of the lines in here. You got a big one here. And then you get some marks right there. So we're gonna start sanding these and get to work.
Onto the walnut board.
So what you're gonna wanna do is start out with 80 grit sandpaper. This is gonna be a workhorse to really get those knife marks out of your board and get everything nice and level before we can move on to the next steps. Now with this 80 grit sandpaper, it's really coarse, but it's gonna get gummed up pretty easy with the mineral oil and beeswax. So make sure and change out your sandpaper fairly frequently. You'll probably need about 3 or 4 discs of sandpaper to get through this initial process. Once you get everything all leveled and nice and smooth, you're going to go over it real quick with 120 grit or 150 grit, whichever you have. At this point, we're ready to move up to the 220 grit sandpaper, but first we're going to do what's called a water pop. What the water pop's going to do is you're going to spray a water bottle, or you could wipe water on there, and this lifts the threads of the wood, so you're going to knock it down and you're going to start making it feel like glass by doing so. Do not skip this step, it's the most important. And make sure the board is completely dry before you start sanding. So go ahead and change out to your 220 grit sandpaper now. You want to make sure and get all the edges, the top, the bottom, the handles, and the juice screws nice and smooth. Okay, it's time for your final step in sanding, the water pop. This is going to be the last water pop. Go ahead and get your water bottle, or you can put some water on there. You don't want to soak it. You just want to get it a little bit wet to lift those threads so you can knock them down. The purpose of the 320 grit is to really get everything smooth as glass. We're going to go through all the boards individually, make sure we get them all exactly the way we want them before we move over to get them in some mineral oil. We're going to need food grade mineral oil for this next step. You can get that at your local grocery store, or you can get it on Amazon.com. They have little bottles, or you can even buy a gallon. And what you're going to want to do is really saturate this wood with the mineral oil. That's what's going to hydrate the wood, keep it from cracking and warping. You want to go ahead, work it in, just slide your hand over it, kind of let the oil bead up on top, do the sides. And then when this dries out a little bit, you're going to want to flip it over, do the bottom, let that dry for a few hours, and then flip it over and do the top again, and then repeat. You really want to get a good amount of mineral oil on here before we move on to the next steps. We're going to finish our project with some walrus oil wood wax. And what this is going to do, it's going to seal in all that hydration we just put in the board with the mineral oil. It's going to have some nice vibrant coloring with this wax on it. You're just going to take some, put it on your hand, and then just work it in. A nice thin little coat on top, work it in the handles, the sides, the juice groove on the front. You can let it sit there for an hour or even better overnight. And then just come back to it with a microfiber towel and just buff everything off it and give it a nice glossy finish, and your board's going to look as good as new. So we're taking a look at the pictures of before we started taking out the knife marks and the finished product after. We've been able to completely dispel the myth today that the cutting boards get ruined with a few knife marks. Sure, it takes a little bit of work and some elbow grease, but I've shown you today how you can make those cutting boards look like glass again. And with a little bit of maintenance after the fact, you can avoid a lot of this by keeping your boards hydrated and sealed. So you'll want to use some form of a wood conditioner or board butter every month or so to keep your cutting boards nice and vibrant and hydrated. Thanks for tuning in, guys.